Welcome again to St. Thomas More for evening 2 of our parish mission with Deacon Harold. And tonight he's going to speak on living the Beatitudes, the social justice. And last night, for those of you who were here, he experienced a very energetic, dynamic speaker, very passionate about his faith and willing to share anything and everything about who he is and his journey of faith. So I just want to kind of just reiterate the fact that these kinds of things at St. Thomas More and at $7 anywhere in a parish, it doesn't happen by chance. It takes a lot of people with a lot of hours, a lot of volunteer time that make this possible. And the Evangelization Commission is the one that was in charge of making sure this event happened. Would the evangelization folks please stand in the church? Sarah? Sarah and Cheryl, Bob back there. All your greeters that are at the door and everybody that's helping Deacon Harold with his sales that he offers, of course, before and after his presentations. Those are all Evangelization Commission members. So thank them for their service and their time to this mission, as well as the Thomas More ladies who provided many of the treats that we're so lucky to enjoy at the receptions afterwards as well. So thank you, Thomas More ladies, all of those who donated goodies for this. So, well, we'll get right to it. Deacon Harold, you're on.
All right, well, good evening. Now, yesterday some people wanted to apologize because they said, well, there's not many people here. We've been advertising to the other parishes. You know, to me, I could care less, to be honest with you. Look, because the people are here, for me, these are the people that God wants to be here. So I don't care if it's 5 people, 10 people. In the Philippines, I spoke in front of 27,000 people. So it's okay, right? Don't worry about it. If you're here, I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm glad that you're here. And tonight we're going to talk about really what it means to be a saint and how to act as saints. And I want to start from a great quote by St. Teresa of Calcutta. She once said, "For a sacrifice to be real, it must cost, it must hurt, it must make us empty ourselves. Give yourself fully to God," she said. "He will use you to accomplish great things on the condition that you believe much more in his love than in your own weakness." Oh, I love that. Because what that is a response to this call to holiness. What the Second Vatican Council called this universal call to holiness. We are all called to be holy, to be, as Jesus says, perfect as the Heavenly Father is perfect. Now, the word teleos in Greek or tamim in Hebrew doesn't mean perfect, that means without fault or error, because nobody can do that. The word means mature, whole, and complete in our faith journey with God. So to be holy, to be perfect, as Jesus says, means to be mature, to be whole, and to be complete in our relationship with God. So that's what it means to be saint. The more that we can do that here on earth, the more we lay a strong foundation for a life forever with God in heaven. Now, Scripture gives us the beginning of this foundation on page 1 of the Bible. In Genesis chapter 1, it says that we are made in the image and likeness of God. So let's stop to think about that for a second. We hear that all the time, the image and likeness of God. But what does that really mean? Now, the word for image in Hebrew, there's a couple different words, but in Genesis 1, the way it's used, the word for image and likeness, the word for image is selem. And selem literally means a shadow that's the outline or representation of the original. So I'm standing here in the light, and I'm casting a shadow. Is the shadow me? This ain't church. It's okay. Come on. This is not hard. Is the shadow me? No, it's not me. It's the image. It's the outline. It's the representation of me. But yet if I move my arm, the shadow moves the arm, right? If I move my leg, the shadow moves the leg. What does that mean for us spiritually? Are we God? Thank you. No, we're not God. But yet, in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 7, it says that we are partakers in the divine nature. In 1 Corinthians chapter 16, Paul says our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit that we have within us from God. So we're not God, but we have God's image, God's outline, God's shadow, if you will, imprinted onto our souls. So what does that mean? Like when you move your arm and the shadow moves? In God's design before the fall, when we speak, God speaks. When we think, God thinks. And when we love, God loves. That's the idea. That we love with a love that's beyond ours. We love with the love of God. That's what St. Teresa of Calcutta was talking about, that total outpouring gift of self-sacrificing love. That's called covenant relationship. See, the problem is we live in a world where relationships are just contracts between people. This is yours and this is mine. That's how we get stuff like friends with benefits and other garbage phrases like that, where young people use to describe relationships where they treat each other as objects for pleasure and gratification. That is not God's plan for us. When God wants to establish a relationship with us, he does not establish a contract, he establishes a covenant. A contract is an exchange of goods. A covenant is an exchange of persons. A contract says, this is yours and this is mine. A covenant says, I am yours and you are mine. It's making a complete and total gift of yourself to someone. And that someone makes a complete and total gift of themselves back to you in love that is free and faithful and total and fruitful. It's a love that gives everything. It's a love that holds nothing back, because Jesus held nothing back of his love for us from the cross. He gave everything. That's why in the holy sacrifice of the Mass, at the Last Supper, Jesus says what? This is the chalice of my blood, the blood of the new and eternal contract. Is that what he said? New and eternal covenant. Just like Mother Teresa said, the word in Greek is kenosis, this breaking open and complete pouring out of self-giving, self-sacrificing love. That's what he did. And because we're made in the image of God, we are also called to give ourselves that way. That's what it means to be made in the image of God. What about likeness? By the way, the word image is a masculine noun. Selem is a masculine noun in Hebrew. What about likeness? Demuth in Hebrew, a feminine noun. So demuth means similar. But what does it mean spiritually? Now, let's say that Deacon Wayne wanted to build a Deacon Harold statue. I don't know why, but say he wanted to build a statue. You put the statue of me on one side, you take my son Benjamin, you put Ben on the other side. You would say they are both in my likeness because they both look like me. In fact, the statue looks more like me than my son. But unlike the statue, my son shares my essence, my nature, my being. In Greek, my ousia, right? My stuff is in my son. So even though the statue looks more like me, my son, because he shares a human nature, is much more in my likeness. That's what it means to be made in the image and likeness of God. And what it means to be a saint, to be perfect, is to see that in other people. That's how we end racism. That's how we end it. Stop looking at someone and seeing a stereotype, and see what God sees when he looks at you. Look, I'm black, in case you haven't noticed, okay? And, I was a police officer for 23. I get it. I've been pulled over for driving while black and all of that myself. But I shared one incident in Chicago. I was dressed like this, suit, crucifix, deacon pin, and I'm speaking at a conference in Chicago. I'm getting into an elevator in a nice hotel, and I'm going up to my room to get ready for dinner. And I go up, and the elevator doors open. There's a woman in there, white woman in there, and I just walk in, dressed like this, and she sees me. She immediately backs up into the back of the elevator and grabs her purse like this. Oh, here we go. So I saw she was scared. I didn't say anything. I just turned around, pushed my floor. The elevator doors closed. I just stood there, standing in front of the door. I didn't say anything to her, didn't look at her. And then got to my floor, the door opened, I walked out. Let me ask you a question. Why was she afraid of me? Now, she could have been assaulted. She could have been, but I didn't do it. So why is she afraid of me? What did I do to elicit that type of response? Nothing. And that hurts. Because I'm a teddy bear. I'm a big black guy, yeah, I get it, but I'm a teddy bear. I'm squeezable, right? But when people look at, they see, like for a smaller example, people see me, oh, you went to Notre Dame. What position did you play? Now, I am the first person in the history of my family ever to go to college. And I got into Notre Dame on an academic scholarship. I've never played football in my life. If you put pads on the floor, I would have no clue how to put them on. I rarely even watch television. The last time I even saw a full football game was when Notre Dame got their butts kicked by Alabama a couple of years back in the college final. What do you call that? The bowl game. The bowl game. That was the last time I saw a full-length football game. But yet, people don't want to diminish the fact of my accomplishments and just say, oh, it's because of football. We have to get past that and start seeing each other the way God sees us when he looks at us. That's how we become saints. And that is the foundation principle for Catholic social justice. Looking at and treating people in the image and likeness of God, to encounter people the way Christ encountered people. To look past the cripple, to look past the older person, to look past the blind and the lame, the things that we mock, the things that we make fun of, the things that we are afraid of, and to see the person that God has placed in front of you. Now, some people would like to think of Catholic social justice as a continuum, right? Sometimes they call it a seamless garment. It doesn't matter what the issue is, life or just war theory or death penalty or working the poor, it's all the same. Wrong answer. It's not all the same. The foundational principle of Catholic social justice is the issue of life. Because if you don't have life, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. If you don't have life, nothing else even comes close. So, in fact, the bishops even list the foundational principle of Catholic social justice is the issue of life. So let's talk about that. Now, I don't have time to go through the whole litany of all the things, but I'm going to touch on a few things. Now, a few years ago, some Notre Dame friends of mine were pregnant with their 5th child. And my joy turned to sorrow when I read the second line of their email. It started as a routine ultrasound. They quickly learned that their daughter had anencephaly. Anencephaly is a neural tube disorder which much of the brain isn't formed or even missing. They started a blog and they posted updates on how things were going. A month after the ultrasound, they posted this. A question that comes up is, how do you deal with a situation like this? How many times have we been asked already if we would like to terminate? It is not at all an option for us. This is our child that we are going to love and nurture for as long as we can. Actually, she isn't even our child, ultimately. She's God's child, like all of our children. Our deep faith in God and our hope in heaven keeps us going. See, they took seriously when Jesus said, I am the vine and you are the branches. They allowed God the Father to prune away the dead branches of a culture of death. A culture of death that says, like Professor Peter Singer, who's originally from Australia. He's a professor of, believe it or not, ethics at Princeton University. This is the direct quote from this man, who's often called the most influential philosopher alive. He says, it would be ethically okay to kill 1-year-old children with physical or mental disabilities, although ideally the question of killing these children should be raised as soon as possible after birth. You hear what he said? So if you have a kid that's Down syndrome, you have a kid that's trisomy 13, you have a kid with anencephaly or any other kind, see, to him, that's garbage. You can kill those kids up to 1. In fact, he even changed that now to even up to almost 2 years of age. Now, why did he say that? Here's another quote from this man. It would be ethically immoral to kill a piglet over a human baby. Why? Because pigs are smarter. He's actually said that. I have the quote. It would be worse to kill a pig than to kill a baby because pigs are smarter. That's what we're doing. This guy's called the most influential philosopher alive. This is what your kids are being taught in public school. And you wonder why they end up leaving the faith, because we are afraid to tell them the truth. This is a bunch of garbage. But this is what they're being fed. They named the baby Angela because they knew she was going to be their little angel in heaven. They had been praying for a miracle, but then in a later blog they wrote, Dear Lord, if not a miracle healing, then please let her be born alive so that we can shower our love on her. A child first learns to love where? In the mother's womb, where that child knows the relationship of love and life is intensely personal. See, God never intended love and life to be separated. Think about it in Genesis chapter 1. In Genesis 1, he creates male and female, he created them, Isha and Isha. Out of the fullness of humanity, male and female, equal. Because, and again, remember, yesterday we talked about the equality was shown from the rib. In Genesis 1, that equality is shown because they're created together. Male and female, he created them. But what's the first command that God gives them? As the first thing that God does, he says, and God blessed them. What's he doing there? He's establishing a covenant between the two of them. Then he speaks to them for the first time. What's his very first words to our first parents? Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Love and covenant relationship. First commandment, life. Love, life. Genesis chapter 2. She comes from the side. Therefore, a man leaves his father and mother and clings to his wife, and the two become one. Love, life. Psalm 119, verse 88. Because of your love, give me life, and I will do your will. See, what we've done in our culture, we have forced apart love and life. Two things that God never intended to be separated. We forced them apart, and that's created an emptiness. That's created a chasm. That's created a void. And for human beings, that kind of emptiness, a void, that's unsettling. So we have to fill it with something. What do we fill it with? Porn. We fill it with overworking. We fill it with alcohol. We fill it with drinking. We fill it with drugs. We fill it with all the stuff, thinking that stuff is going to somehow bring back to, and it won't. It's like a bottomless pit. The more you put it, it just keeps falling, and it doesn't bring this back together. What brings this back together is what he did for us on the cross. What brings us back together is cooperation with the grace of the sacraments. That's what brings us back to love and life. That's what these young parents understood. Like a vine attached to a branch, a child is literally attached to her mother, depending on her love for their very life. When Angela was born, she weighed 6 pounds and 7 ounces. They thought they would only have a few minutes with her, so she was baptized and confirmed immediately by a priest when she was born. But she lived for 3 days. And during those 3 days, Angela learned the meaning of love by attempting to nurse from her mother's breast and hearing the voice of her mother and her father and her sisters and those loving touches and caresses. Angela experienced the love of God through a unique and special bond with her mother, a bond that none of us men will ever fully understand or appreciate. Children learn the meaning of love from their mothers. Look, why do you think that the devil in Genesis 3 went after the woman first? Now, remember I said yesterday, women are weak, right? Remember the women are weak? No, women aren't weak. Remember the Ezer Kenegdo, the battle partner. Women are strong. So why did he go after the woman in Genesis 3? Very simply this. John Paul II says it beautifully in Mulieris Dignitatem. In fact, that document is also 50 years old this year. No, it's 30 years old this year, on the dignity and vocation of women. He says, in God's eternal plan, it is woman in whom the order of love in the created world of persons first takes root. What does that mean? In God's mind from all eternity, when he planned to take love, and we know from 1 John 4:16 that God is love, he implants that love, he pours out that love into man, male and female, he created them. The love, of course, is in both. But in a special way, that love takes root, finds a home, establishes a foundation within the heart of the woman. The woman is the very heart of God's love. Even the secular culture realizes this. Don't we say things, the woman is the heart of exactly, heart of the family, the heart of the home. Exactly right. Even the secular culture recognizes that fact. Look, when my kids were younger, I took them to the park to give my wife a break. And I'm there watching, make sure everybody's staying safe, playing on the playground equipment. And I think it was Claire was coming down the slide, and she fell off. So she's had a little, she wasn't badly hurt or anything like that. But, I ran over to her, to my child. My child is crying. And I said, oh, don't worry, baby. Daddy's here. And she's like, she looks up to me. Who's she calling for? Mommy! I'm standing right there! And she's yelling for her mother. Why? Because she doesn't love me? Look. When you live inside of somebody for 9 months, guys, we cannot even fathom what that is like. But that reminds me, every time we pray the creed on Sunday, that beautiful fact always reminds me how women participate in the intimacy of the Holy Spirit. Every Sunday we say, Credo et Spiritus Sanctus, Dominum et Vivificantem. I believe in the Holy Spirit, which is what? The love between the Father and the Son. The Holy Spirit, the Lord and giver of love, life. God's plan. And that's why he went after the woman, because he said, if I can destroy that, everything else will fall. And guess what? He was right. That's what's happening in our culture today. It's no different than what happened on page 1 of the Bible. The same stuff is happening today. And the reason it's happening because we allow it to happen. When your friend comes up to you and says, why are you Catholic? You mean a woman doesn't have a right to choose? It's her body, her choice. You want to belong to a church that molests kids? Who do we belong to? And what do? We go, That's why we keep getting our butts kicked in the culture, and that's why our kids leave the faith. Because we're afraid to talk about stuff. The culture's not. You think your kid who's in high school or in secular college is being held back from these professors who are spitting lies in their faces and have to get good grades to believe the lie? Come on. We have to be better than that. We have the fullness of truth. Jesus Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Truth is not an idea or a philosophy. It's a person. It's a dynamic relationship with the living God. And when we're living in His truth, what does He guarantee us? The truth will do what? Set us free to do what? To be the person who God created us to be. That's the goal of covenant relationship. That's the goal of a culture of life. On day 3, surrounded by her family and friends, Angela's breathing became labored. She started to turn purple. And then she took her last breath. And before she died, she opened her eyes. For what her parents saw, she opened her eyes for the first time, briefly, as she was dying. And the parents took that to mean that, they know that their job is to get their kids to heaven. And they believe God was thanking them for a job well done by allowing that beautiful little girl to gaze on the faces of her parents, who sacrificed so much for her, that allowed her to experience the beauty of God's love for 3 precious days before she went to be with God forever in heaven. St. Angela Marie, pray for us. Now, I'm going to talk about a few other issues, but I'm skipping through because I want to talk about that with the context of the next social justice issue. The only other thing I just want to touch on briefly is embryonic stem cells. In California, a couple years ago, they handed out $230 million in federal money to 14 research teams to develop new stem cell therapies. Okay? $230 million to 14 research teams. 10 of the 14 work on adult stem cells only. That shocks you, huh? Because we're talking about California. Now, I'm from Jersey. Remember, I live the left coast. Those people crazy out there. They're crazy. So you would think that 10 of the 14 are doing fetal stem cell research. 10 of the 14 are doing adult stem cells only, which is good, but why? That's the question. Why are they focusing on adult stem cells? Well, you have to go too far. Again, I don't watch TV, but someone shot me a YouTube video of Dr. Oz, Dr. Mehmet Oz, who's the professor of surgery at Columbia University in New York, I guess Oprah Winfrey's favorite doctor. And it was a clip with Dr. Oz with Michael J. Fox. And Dr. Oz had a brain, an actual human brain on the show. And he was showing Michael J. Fox about what Parkinson's, because we all, everybody knows he has Parkinson's. He was showing him what the brain looks like with Parkinson's. Here's what he said. I wrote this down word for word. He said, the stem cell debate is dead. The problem with embryonic stem cells is that it's very hard to control them so they can become cancer. In the last year, we've made 10 years of advancement with adult stem cells. Here's the deal. I can take a bit of your skin, take those cells, and get them back, turn them back in time so that they were like when they were first made. Those are called pluripotent cells, pluripotent stem cells. Because they're your own cells, they aren't as prone to cancer as the other cells are. And because they're your genes. We're single-digit years away from making a big impact in the lives of those with Parkinson's disease, also heart attack victims and diabetics. It's going to be in our lifetime. That's what he said. So I did a little more research. So I found a study I said, how many diseases are currently being treated with adult stem cells? I found 2 research things that confirmed each other, 73 diseases that are currently being treated by adult stem cells right now. I can't even pronounce some of this stuff. Some of the easy: brain cancer, ovarian cancer, testicular cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, lymphadenopathy, diabetes type 1, systemic lupus, multiple sclerosis, juvenile arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, stroke damage, chronic Epstein-Barr infection. I mean, on and on and on. So I said, I wonder how many diseases are being treated right now with embryonic stem cells. Anybody know the number? 0! How many therapies do they think, how many of these diseases are going to be treated by embryonic stem cells in the next 10 years? What's the projection? 0! The score is 73-0. Why are we still playing with babies, destroying babies? Adult stem cells therapies are working. Why are we still messing with children? The score is 73-0. Why? Because we allow it. Oh, Deacon, you always attack Planned Parenthood. Why do you think they're selling baby body parts? They're using the body parts for this kind of research. They're selling the corpses of dead children to these brokers. And it's all about the money. All about the money. It's sick. Oh, but we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. Then don't get upset when you see the news. Do something. Say something. Speak out. Have kids. Build a culture of life. The second principle of Catholic social justice: call to family, community, and participation. Call to family. Again, notice life and then family, the foundation. Now, I'm going to talk about this within the context of a real conversation I had last year. I was having lunch with a brother deacon of mine, Deacon Jack. Deacon Jack lives in the Seattle, Washington area. I was up there doing a mission, and Deacon Jack had transferred from the Portland diocese to the Seattle Archdiocese because his grandkids were up there. He retired, and his wife and he moved up there to be closer to the grandkids. So I hadn't seen Deacon Jack in a long time. So we were having lunch in a restaurant. And not our waitress, but another waitress comes over and says, hey, I heard you guys talking about music. Are you musicians? Because at that point, Deacon Jack and I were talking about music in his parish, what the music was like in his parish. So she heard it, she came over. And now she was wearing a cross, not a crucifix, but a wooden cross, a good-sized wooden cross. So Deacon Jack says to her, no, we're not musicians. We're actually deacons in the Catholic Church. And I noticed you got a cross on. Are you Catholic? And she goes, oh, no. I used to be Catholic. You know, I'm from Texas. And after my parents divorced, my dad moved up here. I was living with my mom, but it wasn't working out, so I moved up here with my dad. My dad doesn't go to church, so I don't go to church. So Deacon Jack said, well, my parish is not too far from here. It's right in the next town. I would be happy to invite you to our parish. So you can just come and see what things are like. Just come and check it out. And she's very polite. She goes, oh, yeah, well, yeah, thank you, you know. Then she got quiet. Then she asked the question she really wanted to ask. Can I ask you guys a question? What do you think about gay marriage? Now, at this point, Deacon Jack took a sip from his coffee and looked at me like, your turn. Because he had been doing all the speaking up to this point. So in a very conversational tone, I said to this young lady, I said, what is marriage? I mean, literally, what does the word marriage mean? It comes from the word matrimony, matrimonium in Latin. Matri is a derivative of the word mater, which means mother. And monium is a suffix ending in Latin, which means the state or condition of something. So literally, matrimony means the state or condition of motherhood. So if you want to redefine marriage, you have to change what those words literally mean. Who has a right to do that? Remember, and look what it's diminishing. It's diminishing what? Motherhood. Because remember I said it's all about the woman. Even the word marriage itself, the state or condition of motherhood. So I said, here's what the Supreme Court did. What is this? No, it's Pepsi. See, what you thought was water from time and eternity, I am now telling you and redefining for you that this is now Pepsi. What is this? If only we would have said something while this, huh? Yeah, Pepsi. You see, you're in a culture of death, right? You fell for the lie. This is water. It will always be water. Some court cannot change the fact that this is water. But that's exactly what they did. I said, so in 6,000 years of recorded history, marriage has always been understood between one man and one woman and any children they have together, which is the heart, the core, the center, the foundation, the nucleus of civilization, culture, and society. I said, what our culture has done today is want to redefine marriage simply to mean a relationship between two people who love each other. Now notice in that definition, no mothers, no fathers, no children. It's just a relationship between two people. In fact, in many places, marriage doesn't have to be between people. In the Seattle area, a woman attempted to marry her apartment building. And you can Google this yourself. Don't believe me. Google it yourself. A woman in France attempted to marry a bridge that cars drive over. And the mayor of the town officiated at the ceremony. A guy in California tried to marry his cat. I mean, we are mocking God up one side and down the other. Because what's happening? Instead of being made in the image and likeness of God, we're trying to make God in our own image and likeness. That's what's happening. So I said to her, I said, what you're talking about is a relationship between two people who love each other. That is a personal lifestyle choice decision. And the government has no business interfering in someone's personal lifestyle choice decision. And the reason why the government has always protected marriage between a man and a woman is because of what that relationship does for all of culture and society, not just those two people. So she says, then she started with a series of, well, what abouts? And the first one was, well, what about children? People have a right to have children. I said, no, no, no. Children are not bargaining chips that can be not right chips that can be bargained for. I said, children have a right to a mother and a father. That's what children have a right to. Now, you're talking about situations where, for example, there's divorce or there's someone dies and the parent has to raise the child by himself. Or I said, yeah, I know that situation well. My parents are divorced. I get it. Well, what about that? I said, that is a sad and tragic circumstance that is not by design. See the difference? My mother didn't marry my father saying, boy, I can't wait till 20 years from now when he cheats on me and starts drinking and doing all this abuse, all that. My mother said, I can't wait for that to happen. That didn't happen on their wedding day. Those things happen because of sad and tragic circumstances and not by design. And since you're talking about children, let's talk about that. Those couples can't have children. They're completely sterile. Well, they can do in vitro. Oh, in vitro. Do you know what in vitro fertilization is? She said, no. I said, listen, in vitro fertilization 101. On the day that a girl is born, she is born with all the eggs in her ovaries that she will have for her entire life on the day that she's born. A woman does not generate new eggs in her body. They're all there on day one. What they do for IVF is they give her a hormone injection which releases those eggs. They take some of those eggs and put them in petri dishes. Then they get a sample from the guy who may or may not be her husband, and I'll just leave it up to your imagination how they get that sample, and they mix them together in a petri dish. And they generate and they start to generate. So let's say there's 20 of them in a Petri dish, 20. What are those things in the Petri dish? I asked her. She goes, well, they have names. I think they call them zygotes. I said, well, you can call them a zygote. You can call them a blastocyst. You can call them an embryo. Call it whatever you want. It is a human being at an early stage of development. We have names for human being throughout the continuum of life, right? When a child is born, what is it? Infant. Then toddler. Then, what's the new one? Tween now? There's tween. Then there's teen. Then there's young adult. Then there's middle age. Then there's old. We also have names for human beings before they're born. Blastocysts, zygotes, gametes, embryos, whatever you want to call them. They're human beings at an earlier stage of development. Now, they allow those to get to an 8 or 10 cell division. Then they take some of those embryos and implant them in the uterus of the woman. What do they do with the rest of them? They either cryogenically freeze them for use for experimentation, especially embryonic stem cells, or they dump them down the drain. Because human embryos don't even count as medical waste. They just dump them down the drain. So let's say they take 5, and they implant those 5 embryos in the uterus of the woman. How many children they want? 1. Say 3 of them take. They're going to have triplets. You think, wow, what a joy. Now the doctor's going to call in a specialist to talk about selective reduction. You only wanted 1 child, you're going to have 3. Which of the other 2 you're going to... So let's see. You create 20 children, kill 19 of them so you can get the one that you believe you deserve? When is it ever okay to take the life of an innocent person? Somebody tell me, when is it ever okay to take the life of an innocent person? Because she couldn't answer it. I said, you don't have a right to create people to destroy them so you can get the one that you think you deserve. And God forbid, if it's a same-sex couple and the baby's not the sex that they want. In Oregon, in my town, Portland, a same-sex female couple got pregnant through IVF. When they found out the child was a boy, they aborted it. Because it was a boy. They didn't want a boy, they wanted a girl. So they killed the child because they couldn't get the girl that they felt they deserved. Is that right or just? I said, look, again, law enforcement example. If you get robbed outside of a police station and you go into, and there's a desk sergeant there. You say, I was just robbed. Where? Outside. What? You were just robbed? Yes. You're a victim of crime? Yes. Will he take his gun out and shoot you in the head? Yes or no? No, because we don't kill crime victims. We don't kill innocent victims of crime. You talk about, because I know you're going to bring up rape or incest. A child that may have been conceived by rape or incest is an innocent victim of crime. The child did nothing wrong. Why do both have to be killed? Why not create a society that welcomes everyone, no matter the situation or the circumstance upon which that child... You know where they do that really well? Africa. I've been to Africa on a speaking tour. They don't kill their own children. You know why they're trying to do it? But in fact, the U.S. government, in other administrations, just to put it like that, were tying aid to Africa based on them starting abortion and contraception, which were foreign to them. Because they value, it doesn't matter how the child came into being, that is a gift. So then she says, well, they were born that way. Why can't the church just accept that? Even Pope Francis said, not to judge. I said, okay, let's back up here. If that was true, then why did Jesus do any miracles? She said, what? I said, well, for example, the man born blind. The man was blind from birth. He comes to Jesus and he says, Master, I want to see. Did Jesus say, oh, dude, nothing I can do for you. You were born that way. That's just the way the Father in heaven made you. Sorry, you're just out of luck. There's nothing I can do for you. That what he did? Or what did he do? He restored his sight. Why? He restored him to the nature from which God intended from the beginning. We're not intended to be born blind. We're not intended to be born with Down syndrome or anencephaly or trisomy 13 or anything like that. But because that may be the situation, we are still to love and accept everyone because they're all gifts from God. And I told you the principle yesterday. We love everyone, but we always don't love their actions. And we judge actions. We never judge people. That's the principle. So let's say there was a gay gene. There's not, but let's say, I'll give it to you. They found one. What does that mean? That means there's something there that's not supposed to be there. Just like an extra chromosome is Down syndrome. It's not supposed to be there. Do we treat that person with less dignity and respect as a child of God? No, we not. No, absolutely not. Every single child, every single person, no matter who they are to be respected with the dignity of God. We are to see them as the image and likeness of God. We see God in every single person. But that doesn't mean we approve of their actions or decisions. But we love them. We always don't love what they do. That's the principle. But the problem is our culture, they say your actions determine who you are. See, that's one of the reasons why we missed 9/11, by the way. They were looking at profiling and not threat assessment. Profiling and not threat. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Like, stand up for a second. What's your name? Sherry? Stand up. Now look at Sherry here. If I see her in a mall, does she look like a violent threat to you? No. Does she look like someone that's going to just like mug you or something? Does she no, right? Now, if I were to look at her, I'm developing a profile of her, right? That's a mistake. Now, here's the thing. Say you had your grandchild with you, and someone comes to try to snatch your grandchild away from you. What would you do?
I would probably get.
Then you turn into somebody else now, right? Because now the person now you turn into normally it's not you. You would fight for the child. You would defend the child. You would spit on the person or kick them and call the police. Right? You're going into protection mode. That's normally not who you are, right? What we look at in threat assessment, we assess a threat. We look at circumstance and situation to determine how someone gets from ideation to actualization. See? We don't look at you and make a judgment based on how you look. We look at your actions and decisions, and we based our threat assessment model on how does this person say, I'm going to kill someone, they really mean it, or are they joking? You see? That's the criteria we use, right? It's based on the actions, not the person. And that's the same, thank you. And that's the same principle that we follow with this. So then she goes, well, your arguments don't mean anything because they're all just based on nature, and that doesn't mean anything. I said, really? Nature doesn't mean anything. Well, let's do this. Let's take all of our same-sex attracted brothers in the Lord and put them on an island. And then put all of our same-sex attracted sisters 50,000 miles away on an island and put the other 98% of the heterosexual population on an island 50,000 miles away. If we come back in 200 years, who's still going to be here? So I said, nature actually does matter. It actually does matter, which is one of the reasons why marriage has been protected for 6,000 years by civilizations, cultures, and societies. Well, women and minorities were once denied their rights. We can't deny rights to these people as well. I said, hold on, apples and oranges. I said, being black is not a personal lifestyle choice decision. Being black doesn't change the definition of marriage between one man and one woman and any children they have together, which is the heart, the center, foundation of civilization, culture, society. None of that changes based on the color of your skin. This is not the same thing. I said, what about hospitals? People should be able to see who they want in a hospital. I said, I agree. Change the HIPAA laws. You don't have to change marriage, change the HIPAA laws. People should be able to see whoever they want in a hospital. It's not marriage to change that, change the HIPAA laws. So we, in the end, decided to agree not to agree. But then, so Deacon Jack and I finished our meal. We're about to leave. I said, you know what, Jack, let me go say something to her. So I found the waitress. I said, you know, usually when I talk to people about this issue, they get angry and upset and are very disrespectful to me. I said, you know what? You were very respectful, and I just want to say thank you. And I stuck my hand out to shake her hand. And she shook my hand. She goes, you know what? You're the first Catholic I talked to about this issue who didn't go ballistic. And this is no joke, hand to God. She turns to Deacon Jack and asks him for directions to his parish. The truth in love, but it's the truth. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't disrespect her. I told the truth in love. Yes, some of it may have been difficult for her to hear, but sometimes you got to see what happens is this. We're so comfortable in our sin that when someone preaches truth, your conscience that always wants to point back toward the beatific vision, life with God forever, it's so comfortable turned in on itself that when you speak truth, the conscience goes, ooh, turn back to the full. You know you want to, and you fight your conscience, and then it's my fault. Then you write the bishop, and then you complain to the pastor, and then because of what he said. No, it's not me. It's your conscience. I'm pricking your conscience to turn back toward God, to life forever in heaven. Number 3, rights and responsibilities. What about the death penalty? All right. So there's a difference between, first of all, the Bible's always taught that there's not an issue with the death penalty. All right? Now, when it says in thou shalt not kill in the commandments, in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, the word that they use there for kill in Hebrew assumes an innocent life. It assumes that word that they use in Hebrew assumes an innocent life. Right? So the church has always taught that the state has a right, although it has a right to put people to death if under certain circumstances. And that has been a constant teaching of the church. Now, I'm not saying that it should always do it under other circumstances, but let me tell you the difference between revenge and retributive justice. The reason why Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis have said, in fact, Pope John Paul II said in Evangelium Vitae in 1995, that the death penalty should be used very, very rarely. Because in our culture today, it's being used as revenge and not retributive justice. What's the difference? Retributive justice is actually an act of mercy. It's when you tell the person who did evil that they have to rectify the wrong that they've done, and in some circumstances, that rectification of that may take in that person's life because they forfeited that life because they're not innocent. Now, as far as the teaching that, I want to just talk about the teaching real quick. Pope Francis recently said this: the death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person, which is true. If you look at what John Paul II said, the traditional teaching of the church does not exclude recourse to the death penalty if this is the only possible way of effectively defending human lives against an unjust oppressor. That's why he went on to say that it should be very, very rarely, if ever, used. So all Pope Francis is doing is emphasizing that point that John Paul II did, asserting it even more so in our culture today. Because the way the death penalty is revenge, how do we know it's revenge and not retributive justice? They have people watch the person die. They have an audience, right? When someone dies a death row, they open it and there's all these people there watching the person die. That's revenge, not retributive justice. So that's why Pope Francis spoke out. Again, people say, well, he overrode John Paul II. Actually, he didn't. He's emphasizing basically the same thing John Paul II did, but he's emphasizing it more emphatically because of the way the death penalty is used in our culture today. But that doesn't take away the fact that the church says that the state has a right to use a death penalty, but as retributive justice and not as revenge. but it should be rarely, if ever, used. That's the point. Okay, that's the point. Now, option for the poor and the vulnerable in immigration. I want to throw immigration here. Now, I'm an immigrant to the United States. We immigrated to the United States when I was almost 3, and I did not become a citizen until I was 17 years old. I willingly gave up my citizenship to my country, Barbados, when we moved here, to become a United States citizen. This country has provided tremendous opportunities for myself, my siblings, my mother, who came over as a nurse. Barbados was a British colony back until 1968. We got independence. So she trained in England and then found opportunities for nursing in the East Coast in New York and then New Jersey. So we lived in New York temporarily, then we moved to Jersey, where I grew up. So when people say where you're from, I always say Jersey. I found this country to be a place with tremendous opportunities for people who are willing to work hard, who are willing to be loyal to the tenets of what this country was built on, a country that allows people to share their faith openly and to engage others respectfully. And all the opportunities that I've had in my life, all the good things that have happened by the grace of God have happened because I'm in a country that allows that kind of freedom to happen. That needs to be protected. But let me put on my other hat now. I can tell you for a fact, I have assessed threats on a regional and on a national level. And I am telling you, there are people coming here to kill us. I'm not trying to scare you. That is a fact. I have been in the room assessing threats against this great nation. Now, here's a reasonable standard, okay? Say that you were going to have somebody come babysit your kids. Would you just look at the person and say, oh, you look nice. Yeah, go ahead and watch my kids, without doing any due diligence? I mean, what are some minimum things you would do if someone wanted to watch your kids on an extended basis? How about a reference check? How about a background check to make sure they're not going to hurt your kids or steal from you? Is that just reasonable? So if that's a reasonable standard for your own children, why is it not a reasonable standard for our country? To make sure that people that come from countries who have said, we want to kill Americans, that we're making sure that when they say, I'm coming here to study, you are really welcome. You're here to study, to better yourself, to get a better education. We welcome you. Come on in. I want my child to get a surgery. This hospital in the United States is the best hospital. Come on in. We want to make sure that they're not using that as a ruse to come and do another 9/11. To me, that's reasonable. And I'm speaking as an immigrant. It's reasonable. Here's the problem. You know how you solve the whole immigration thing? Very easy. You make legal immigration easier. You make illegal immigration very hard. You make it so hard that people are going to say, oh, forget that. I'll just do it the right way. That's the solution. But nobody wants to do it. I don't care who's in office. Nobody really cares. Because look, once these people get into office, they stop caring about us. They say whatever they want to say to get into office, and then they do whatever they want to do when they're there. For example, I'm not saying anything against Obamacare, right? But the people who passed it, they exempted themselves from it. So let's see. The people who are passing that law can keep their own doctors, can keep all the stuff they had before, but the rest of us have to follow, but they don't, the ones who actually passed the law? Does that make sense to anybody? The United States bishops at that Dallas chart in 2002, right? They said, okay, we have these new standards for protecting children. Who exempted themselves? The bishops. I see a problem with that here. But the thing with immigration, nobody wants to fix it. I think they enjoy fighting. I really think they enjoy fighting over it because nobody really wants to work to a workable solution. Because it's all about making sure my constituents, the people who paid me to be in office, are happy, and they don't care about us. Again, I'm going off the rails here. Okay. What about the poor and the vulnerable? One of the most powerful experiences I've ever had as a Catholic was in Soweto, South Africa. I was on a 2-week speaking tour in South Africa, Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, Soweto, and Randburg Park, Alexandra. And after Mass in Soweto, which was about almost 2.5 hours long, but it seemed like 5 minutes. It was incredible. And I think they used English for part of the Mass for my benefit. It was Zulu, Sotho, and English. And Latin, by the way. They used Latin. And I said, Father, I noticed you guys use Latin. He goes, yes, that is the language that ties the church together. That's the language of the church that ties all of us together. I said, I love this guy. So after Mass, he says, Deacon, we must go bring Jesus to the people. I'm like, all right, we're going to do some evangelization or something. I'm going to get inside. So he grabs a ciborium with hosts, and we start driving. So I'm like, oh, okay, we must be doing a communion service or something. I'm not sure what's going on. So we get out at a squatter camp. Now, I know you've seen these places on TV, but when you're actually there, it takes your breath away. How incredible the poverty is in a city like that. We got out, and these tin shacks, 1-bedroom, dirt floors, cardboard roofs, no running water, no electricity, families living in there, and the stench almost knocked me to the ground. And I'm like, what? So we get to the center of this squatter camp, and all I see are children. I don't see any adults. In fact, the only adults I see are nuns, full habit. And I'm like, oh, I'm thinking this must be a children's mass. I'm not sure what's going on yet. So I said to one of the nuns, I said, Sister, where are the adults? Is this a daycare thing? And she goes, no, this is a squatter camp for AIDS orphans. These children have no parents. These children we found in sewers, in toilet bowls. They were thrown out like garbage. We literally found many of these children in the garbage. So these nuns are raising these children. And I broke down. I said, I've never been more proud to be a Catholic than right now. When everybody else threw these children away, it was those nuns, those beautiful sisters, that broke themselves open and poured themselves out, that saw those children and saw Jesus, gave their lives taking care of those children. I will never forget that as long as I live. During my stay, I also got a chance to speak at a church in Alexandra, one of the poorest towns in the entire country of South Africa. When I got there, the church was surrounded by a wall with barbed wire around it. Now, the gig started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, that's kind of early, because usually they're at like 7 o'clock. The priest said, we have to be done before it gets dark. It's too dangerous. I said, okay. So he goes, and this gentleman, he's your bodyguard. I'm like, dude. I said, I said, you may not be aware, but my job back in the United States, I'm law enforcement. I'm actually on dignitary protection details. I was on President Bush's details, on the Dalai Lama's detail. I said, I can handle myself. He goes, here, you need protection. I'm like, okay. So it was crazy. So we get to this church about 3:45 across the street from the rectory, and the church is packed. I mean, standing room only, packed to the gills. And it was hot. And no AC. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And Father says, before we begin, would you like to lead the Chaplet of Divine Mercy? I said, I'd be honored to, Father. He goes, can you do it in Latin? Because they know the Latin. I'm like, oh, yeah, let's do this. So, I mean, it was I'm right now, I'm too dark, but you can see the hair rising up. I still can hear their voices singing that chaplet in Latin, and they knew the Latin better than I did. It was incredibly beautiful. And I think, here's the church. Here's the church. In a place that I would never bring my family to, because it was dangerous. Here is the church gathered in prayer with the poor. And these are the people that Jesus reached out to. You know, one of the things that we used to do as a family in our parish, just a little bit about my parish. I'm the only black deacon still in the whole archdiocese. I'm the first and only one still. And by the way, Portland is the second oldest archdiocese in the United States next to Baltimore. A lot of people don't realize that. So I'm in an inner city parish, right? Makes sense. So our parish is poor, inner city, maybe 120 families. Half are Vietnamese. The other half are mostly Africans and Filipinos, with some Europeans and some African Americans mixed in. Mostly it's very, very ethnically diverse parish in the hood. A lot of poor people around us. So one of the things that we did was between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we would bring Christmas boxes to poor families in our neighborhood. Now, when we started doing this, I brought the entire family, including my kids. So I wanted them to see. So we would go, we'd have like a couple of big boxes. One would have like turkey and ham and canned food and all kinds of stuff, and the other box would have presents for the children. And so we get to the tenement, and we go inside and we sing a few Christmas carols, and then we put the boxes down and stuff, and you can see the mom in there looking through the box. Now you can see the calculus, right? She's not looking at what you brought. She's saying to herself, how long can I make this last? The kids are jumping up and down, the kids in the house, because they have no shoes on, but they're thrilled because they got presents. This is probably the only time they'll ever get a present for the whole year. And when we left to go to the next house, my children would say things to me, Daddy, why do they smell like that? Daddy, where are their shoes? Daddy, where is their daddy? I wanted to teach my kids a valuable lesson. First of all, the holidays, it's not all about presents. Because you know what? On Christmas Day, we're going to be warm. We're going to be well fed. We're going to be around people we love. I want to show them what Christmas is really about. Like that first Christmas, where Mary, Jesus, and Joseph were homeless in a stable. These poor people that we serve, they're not celebrating Christmas, they're living it. They're living Christmas. And I want to show those children, my kids, by our example, not just telling them about it's good to help the poor, that they actually have to get their hands dirty and do it. When my mom died, I found out some things about her I never knew. Someone reached out to me on Facebook. This girl who was I'm the oldest. I have two brothers and my little sister. It's one of my sister's friends. I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember you. You were friends with my sister in grade school. She goes, I cannot thank your mother enough. I'm like, what did my mom ever do? She goes, there are many days that I would not have eaten if it were not for your mother. I'm like, whoa, what? And I called my sister. I said, Bob, that's her nickname, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, did you, what is this about? She goes, I didn't know about this either because my mother never said anything. She fed this girl's family. Had no idea. I learned the meaning of sacrifice from her. My mom was a nurse. She worked in the CCU, cardiac care unit, on the graveyard shift. That was back in the days when the nurses had the starched hats and the white uniforms and the white stockings and the white shoes, you know. And many, many, many nights she went to work with big runs in her stockings and holes in her shoes because we needed stuff. I learned the meaning of sacrifice. I learned the meaning of self-gift. I learned the meaning of going beyond yourself to look at Jesus and somebody from my mother. And I've been passing that on to my children. We have an obligation and a responsibility and a duty to help those who are poor. Not just out of a sense of pity, because though we, not just the poor, but the poor in spirit, we are the people that Jesus came to save. We are the people that Jesus ministered to. Now, one thing we do in our pantry, our food, we're one of the smallest parishes in the entire diocese, but we're top 10 for our St. Vincent de Paul conference because of the amount of people that we serve. In addition to giving out food, we also give out prayer cards. We also give out rosaries because we want the people to be fed and then spiritually fed as well. Everybody, and again, you should be involved in that with your children, not because they need service hours for school, but you have to do it with them. Lead by example. It's still every Thanksgiving. Before we eat our own meal, we go help the homeless first. On Thanksgiving Day, then we have our meal. Now, let me say something to you who may have money here, okay? Don't feel bad because you have been blessed with wealth. Let me say that right now. Because what does the Bible teach? Money is not the root of, in fact, I'll read the quote for you. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 9. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare. For the love of money is the root of all evil. Not having money is the root. That's the love of money. It's when money becomes your God. That's when it's a problem. If you've been blessed with resources, that's nothing wrong with that. Don't feel guilty or don't feel bad. But don't let it become your God. And because you've been blessed that way, you need to share those gifts with others. Because I tell you, when you die, and you will, God's not going to ask to see your portfolio. He's not going to ask you how big your house was. He's not going to ask you how many cars you had. He's going to ask you one question. Where are my talents? You remember the parable. One guy had 5 talents. When the master was leaving, he gave one guy 5, another guy 2, another guy 1. Then he left. Then he came back. Where are my talents? Okay, you gave me 5, I got you 10. Yes! Come on in, brother. Come on. What about you? You didn't give me as much as you gave him. You gave me 2, I got you 4. Yes! Come on in. What about you? Okay, it's like this. You see, I knew you were frugal. I knew when you reap where you didn't sow, and you sow, you reap. And I was afraid that I didn't want to lose what you gave me, so I buried it. And here's your 1 talent back. Now, think for a second. He didn't lose the talent. It wasn't like the prodigal son who spent his father's money on sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? He just didn't use what he was given. And that wasn't good enough. The master didn't, remember what the master said? Dude, you could at least put in the bank and got me some interest. You could have done the minimum. And what was his reward? He got kicked to the curb. See, the problem is we think, all I have to do is be a good person to get to heaven. All I got to do is be a good person. I don't need organized religion. I just have to be good. Wrong answer! Jesus does not teach that anywhere in the Bible. It does not say be good and you'll get to heaven. What about the rich young man? What must I do to have eternal life? He asked the Lord. Jesus says you have to follow the commandments, and he lists about 5 of them. He goes, I've done all those from my youth. I'm a good person. I've done all the stuff. Did Jesus say, dude, you're good to go. Just lock your life in cruise control. Just put it in neutral and coast your way into heaven. Is that what he said? He said, he looked at him with sadness. There's one more thing you have to do. All this stuff, sell it. Give it to the poor, you'll have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. And he couldn't do it. What's the lesson for us? Everything that we think is important in this life, Jesus is saying, put that second, put me first. And I will give you more than you can ever ask for or imagine. We won't do it because we want to buy security, that money buys us all the security that we'll need. It'll buy us all the happiness that we need. And it doesn't. I'll never forget, a guy heard me on Catholic Answers Live. I've been on like 25, maybe 30 times on Catholic Answers. A guy heard one of my broadcasts, wealthy guy, Catholic business owner, called me up, Deacon, I'd like you to come and talk to me and my wife, but don't tell anybody you're coming to see me. I said, okay, how do I get to your place? So I find the house, this big mansion place. So I ring the doorbell, and the buzzer says, it goes, the door's open. So I open the door. I said, hello? He goes, we're back here. Had no idea where the voice came from. I'm like, flip a coin, left or right, So I went left. So I went around the corner. There's a pool. There's a game room. And finally, they're sitting in the patio in the back. And so we sit down. I start talking a little bit. Then his wife is, talking about she's not happy. And he says, honey, I don't understand. When I first started out in business, we didn't have a lot. But now we have the house, we have the car. But I'll never forget what she said. She looked at him and said, but I don't have you. I don't have you. Jesus is saying, put me first, put everything else second. And that's how you find true wealth. The next principle, the dignity and rights of workers. I'm going to end here in a second. I'm not going to get to all these, unfortunately. Dignity and right of workers. The economy must serve people, not the other way around. Okay? The economy, in fact, it comes from a word in Greek, oikonomia, which means the workings of. So the economy is supposed to work for the people, not the other way around. So business owners, you share your wealth with your employees because they're the ones making you the money. To me, that's common sense, but a lot of business, it's all about the stocks and the bonds and the money, and they treat the people like the Enron thing. Imagine you work for a company almost your entire adult life, 30 years, 40 years, and you get in that retirement, and all of a sudden it is gone. Because the people up the ladder chain squandered all of the resources of that. That is evil. That is evil. But there are also companies that do a very good job. Chick-fil-A does an excellent job. I talk to Chick-fil-A employees when I go in there. We just got our first 2 in Oregon, by the way. They finally made their way up to the Pacific Northwest. But they're not in Portland. Because Portland has very tight urban growth boundaries. Anyway, that's another thing. So one's near Nike in Beaverton, the other one's in Clackamas, 2 suburbs. But you know what they did? This is awesome. The first, you know how the lines are at Chick-fil-A, right? The first day that it opened, there were homeless people there. Now, the Chick-fil-A thing is whenever they open a new store, the first 100 customers eat free for a year. The employees came outside and asked the people in the front of the line who had pitched tents the night before, so they could sleep in that parking lot. They said, will you please allow these homeless people to come in front of you? And, you know, the Oregonians, as wacky as they are, they had no problem. The people are real nice out there. They had no problem with that. In fact, the news crew came out and filmed it, and they did a news story on it. Because people were against, remember, where I live is very anti-religion. And, you know, Chick-fil-A doesn't care. I mean, they're very, you know, religious kind of, but so they were like, oh, we don't want Chick-fil-A. But when they saw that, people were like, oh, maybe they're not so bad. Now, Walmart's a different story. They don't like no Walmart, I'll tell you right now. But that's the way it's supposed to work. That's the way business is supposed to work. And so if you are a business owner, you have to think, again, when you're making a human resource policy, you're making a hiring decision, are you seeing Jesus in the person? That means if you have to take disciplinary action, you do it. For example, I had an employee when I first was on the job as chief. I was in charge of fire and life safety and environmental health and safety. The guy I had on there had an alcohol issue. So the first time I caught him at work drunk, warned him, wrote him up. Second time, this was in a meeting with a guy from the Portland Fire Bureau, and he was drunk again. The fire guy kept to me, this guy has a problem. So I went to Human Resources, we did, and now they want to fire him then. I said, no, hold on. Even Jesus gave someone a third chance, right? Remember, Peter denied Jesus 3 times, and 3 times Jesus forgave him. I said, Jesus even gave people a third chance. I said, let's give him one more chance. So we got him into an outpatient treatment, all of that. It lasted for a while, but then he came to work drunk again. And we had no choice but to terminate his employment. Because now, remember, he's in charge of fire and life safety on a college campus. Imagine if this guy screws up and college kids die in a fire because this guy didn't do his job. We had to let him go. But we did it with dignity and respect. And I followed up with him even after he was fired. Are you okay? Are you in a program? Is there anything else we can do to help? That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of stuff that we need to consider. We're talking about workers and employees. The next one is solidarity. I'll skip over that one. And then care for creation. You know, this pontificate has been talking a lot about creation, so I'm not going to really get into that, except to say this. I want to just break down the lie of overpopulation. Overpopulation is a complete and utter myth. Complete and utter myth. There is no overpopulation problem. Now, don't believe me. Remember, China was so concerned about overpopulation. What did they institute? A 2-child policy. Oh, what happened recently? Oh, wait, we don't have enough kids. Now they have they had a 1-child policy. Now it's a 2-child policy. Now they're even considering that's not even enough now. I've been to Singapore 5 times. The 3rd time I went to Singapore, the government wanted me to talk about marriage and family life to Buddhists, Muslims, and Hindus. Why? The government said if we don't get our population up, our economy is going to tank and never recover. There are countries that are paying couples monthly subsidies for every additional child they have. It's cheaper for the government to pay them than if they don't have children. I've been to these countries. There's no overpopulation problem. Let me give you some math. I went to the UN Population Database website. And according to them, we have about 7 billion people in the world. 6,908,688,688,000 people. Okay, so I did some math. The largest state, of course, is Alaska, but the second, in the 48, the lower 48, it's Texas. So the landmass of Texas is 7,494,271,488 square feet. So I did some math. So if I divide the square foot mass of Texas by the number of people in the world, you get 1,084.76 square feet per person. That's approximately a 33 by 33 foot plot of land for every person on the planet. Enough space for a townhouse. Given an average of 4 people per family, every family would have a 66 by 66 plot of land, which would comfortably provide for a single-family home and for a small yard. And all of them would be able to fit in a land mass the size of Texas. Now think about that for a second. That's Texas. What about the whole rest of the world? Where's the overpopulation problem? There's none! What you see on TV is this: war, natural disaster, infighting, civil war. It drives people from the outer regions, from the country areas, into the cities. So when you see the people on the streets, homeless, you see, like, for example, I just came back from the Philippines. Incredible poverty in the Philippines. You drive down the highway, you see these shacks after shacks, neighborhoods, just unbelievable. And then right next to that are some of the wealthy areas. So the disparity there. But the reason those things exist because of other things, hurricanes that are happening, is driving the people from their outer regions into the city. And so the cities are overcrowded, but as far as overpopulation, there's none. Germany's paying people to have more children. Canada's paying people to have more children. Singapore is paying people to have more children. China's got more, the 2-child policy plus now. Where's the problem? It's a myth. But yet, we all buy into it. And then we want to see, we as Catholics buy into that lie. Then we say, oh, we can't have more than 2 kids. And you wonder why you can't fill your Catholic schools. Because you can't take advantage of economies of scale. If the schools were full, then tuition would be lower because the school is full. But because you can't fill the schools, the tuition has to be higher because less people are paying into the school system. More kids, lower tuition. Oh, but kids are... I'll never forget, we had the twins. We're going out to dinner. And we had to have 2 babysitters. One for the older girls and one for the twins. So we're at dinner without the kids. And we're talking about our babies, talking about the family, how things are going between us, all that stuff. And a couple from the next table gets up after they paid each other. They get up to leave. They walk by our table. They stop. And they said, "No, we heard you talking about your kids." They said, "You know what causes that, right?" And I was starting to whoop. Without missing a beat, my wife takes a bite of her salad. She goes, "And I enjoyed every minute of it." I was like, yes, yes, yes. See, that's the joy of being Catholic that I was talking about yesterday. So instead of getting mad, I'm like, kids are a blessing. Kids are awesome. Yes, they could be a challenge. I get it. But life is a beautiful gift from God. Okay, so to end here. So saints are people who have responded generously to the love of God showered on them. They have survived the pains and the challenges of this world. They have lived the Beatitudes. They have washed their robes white in the blood of the Lamb. And now they rejoice and share in the total victory of Christ. Strengthened by the food of the angels that we receive from this sacred altar, let us give, by the witness of our lives, by living out these principles of Catholic social justice, let us give blessing and glory, wisdom and thanksgiving, honor, power, and might to our God, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you all very much.